Hey, what is going on, everybody out there? This is Jakejames Lugo. Welcome to the channel and welcome to this brand new JJ's One Man Podcast. I hope you guys have been doing well. I've been a busy bee over here doing a bunch of different content in a variety of places, not just here on the channel. Recently, if you've been following me on my social media, like both Twitter or X is what people are calling it, but still I'm calling it Twitter for the record, okay? If you've been following me on Twitter or you've been following me on TikTok or Instagram, I did share that I finally actually had my first op-ed published over on .esports. It's not my first op-ed that I've ever wrote, but I actually had it first published for their outlet that was written specifically for them. And it was Star Wars related. I actually got to write a little bit about Star Wars Outlaws and get into a conversation or a debate that Star Wars fans have been having ever since Star Wars Outlaws was actually announced. But go check that out if you haven't already. Maybe I'll leave a link in the description box so you guys could see it on your own time. But that's not what we're here to discuss, okay? I've been a busy bee, but there's been a lot of other stuff going on in the world of entertainment, both in video games as well as also movies, TV, general entertainment. There's been a lot of stuff. I mean, I'm over here doing things and I finally get a chance to rest, and then all of a sudden a bunch of other stuff happens, literally like late at night into the next morning. It's like, at least let me have my morning coffee and let me sit down before all this stuff like goes chaotic. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's crazy, okay? But what am I talking about? There was a couple things, as you guys could tell by the title, that have went down. Now, the first big thing, we're going to do with the video game stuff specifically first, is the stuff going on with the Kotaku EIC that was just fired. Okay, this happened literally not at the time I'm recording this a couple days ago. I wrote about it over on Clownfish TV. I have all the details on there if you want the specifics. It was originally first reported on gamesindustry.biz, but it was also taken from a Substack that was written by another journalist. I believe her name was Shannon, that actually wrote up this stuff at the first place. But basically, the main gist of all that is this. The main, website Kotaku that we're talking about, the editor-in-chief, Patricia Hernandez, was fired from Kotaku. That's it, clear-cut, straightforward, no nonsense. Basically, she was fired, and according to her and other people that have written about this, no specific details about why have come out, but she did kind of hint at that it was because of Geo Media, that her disagreement, quote unquote, it was a personal disagreement, it sounds like, with Geo Media that ended up leading to her dismissal or her firing. This isn't like they were letting her go as far as like, you know, something, we just don't want to work with you anymore. This was straight up that she was fired. And the reason why I could say that and why other people could say that is because it got reported by gamesindustry.biz, and it was in her own words. According to that Substack write-up, where she talked with Shannon, that was actually writing the Substack, about what happened. And one of the big things that was quoted that she did detail about, which, by the way, I should mention, Patricia Hernandez probably has an NDA where she can't outright say exactly what happened for one reason or another. That's how it usually goes with most jobs, especially a position like that. But basically, she said, like, look, like at some point when you have like instances where you're writing about Tears of the Kingdom, you know, sometime after release and all this other stuff that's going on, it becomes harder and harder to have a little breathing room to do what you want to do, or to have like some sort of like, you know, room to push the envelope, which kind of matches up to what's been going on with Kotaku over the last, like, couple years? Even just this year, there's been a lot of nonsense over there that I've talked about here on the podcast a couple times. To kind of give you guys a little bit of a refresher and why this kind of relates to this, the main thing that you guys need to remember was that Kotaku got in trouble with a lot of people and got a really big backlash because of some of their reports about Tears of the Kingdom, specifically the leaks of the game before the game came out. On top of, you know, in addition to all the craziness that they had when they published editorials or op-eds about Metroid Dread when that game first came out, and they were pretty much almost encouraging people to go pirate the game or go emulate the game rather than buy it on the Nintendo Switch. That's a big problem, okay? And the other thing is, too, is that was done, the Tears of the Kingdom op-ed anyway, was done in retaliation because it came out because a couple different editors over at Kotaku, I believe it was Ethan Gotch and maybe Luke Plunkett, that came out and said, like, yeah, like Nintendo blacklisted us. And the real reason, even though they didn't outwardly say it, was because of that editorial about Metroid Dread. Like, there was a lot of different things outside of those that led up to this point. And you know, it really kind of, it shows you like, look, like eventually if you mess around too much, eventually you're going to find out. Eventually those consequences are going to come back around. Now, I'm pretty sure, getting back more focused on Patricia Hernandez being fired, I'm pretty sure there was other reasons too, which will more than likely eventually come out. Again, I really believe she probably had like an NDA that she had to sign, you know, in relation to her dismissal or her firing. But I really do believe like a lot of this stuff eventually is going to come out. Somebody's going to talk. Somebody's going to flat out say it, if not her, about what happened. She's going to be doing freelance work, according to her, like at least, focusing on that a little bit more. I'm pretty sure she'll probably get picked up by a different outlet at some point. I would not be surprised. But it really goes back down to this. And I've been very critical of Patricia Hernandez ever since she first became the editor-in-chief of Kotaku. The main thing that I was always like a big stickler for, I was always a little bit harsh with my criticism for, was because when she first came on, she was saying that things were going to be different at Kotaku. Things were going to change for the outlet, for the better. Remember, she came at a time right after a lot of different editorials about like some of the Call of Duty devs and a lot of other op-eds were published that were pretty much very hostile towards a lot of the different subject matters and also to the audience. That's a huge problem that Kotaku has faced for the last, I want to say maybe 5 years. I could be wrong at the time, and possibly could be more, but for a long time, Kotaku is really the main outlet that people point to that has this real contentious relationship with their audience, with their readership, with their viewers, the people that follow them. The majority of people that follow Kotaku are not following it because they're a fan of the content. They're following it because they're really trying to hate on them. They're really trying to just get mad, and they're getting upset or looking for any little thing that's going to rock the boat that they could just talk smack about Kotaku about or dunk on them. People seem to forget, too, that years ago, a lot of great writers and great content came from Kotaku, specifically with investigative reporting. I mean, we had Jason Schreier over there. The man still has ninjas, as far as I'm concerned. He's probably one of the best games journalists when it comes to investigative reporting that we've had in the industry. We've had Steven Totillo, who used to be the editor-in-chief of Kotaku before Patricia Hernandez came into line here. And also Brian Crescente, who also has done a ridiculous amount of content and ridiculous amount of work when it comes to journalism in video games. I mean, he was the reason why people found out about PlayStation Home early and got Kotaku blacklisted by Sony, which, by the way, he didn't do anything wrong. He was doing his job, but that was totally Sony's fault. But that was like the level of credibility in journalism that we saw from Kotaku back in the day. That has totally changed now. Like, people do not look at Kotaku with any sort of good light. Like, they just have a real problem with them. And really, it's because of a lot of different reasons with their content and the way that they are towards their audience. And this is the other thing that's related to it. We have a lot of editors over there at Kotaku, which you could see, again, go online on places like Twitter, go online on places like Instagram and anywhere else, forums like NeoGAF or Reddit, etc., where there's like this really obnoxious, nasty attitude towards the audience from Kotaku editors. Keep in mind, this isn't always coming from content that people just don't like or just have a real issue with. This is usually coming from like the reactions and just the outward, just like hostile like attitude that those editors have towards the audience. And keep in mind, a lot of this also happened underneath Patricia Hernandez's watch. Do you guys remember? I talked about this on the podcast when Luke Plunkett came out after Nintendo was or at least the news came out that Nintendo had blacklisted Kotaku, where he put up that picture of the World War II fighter pilot. I'm not going to say exactly what it was, but like, go out there. If you don't know what it is, go out on Google and look it up. But it's really like this image that really has some really nasty, like implied like statements about Nintendo and about like the idea of getting blacklisted by a publisher, which was not cool, which is really messed up once you see it. But it was stuff like that that people take real issue with and have really been turned off from the website. Like, that's a really crappy thing to see. And mind you, that's from senior editors at that website. This is like a common occurrence over there. And again, we're always going to have this weird relationship between journalists or media people and the viewers and the readers and the audience. There's always going to be a weird relationship there. It should never always be like a goody-goody relationship. Like, you should definitely respect both sides, no matter what side that you're on, but always understand that one side is going to be the way that it is compared to the other. Journalists are always going to have their job. They're always going to have to make the content that they have to make, say the statements that they have to say, especially when it's the truth on certain stuff they're reporting or covering. And the audience is going to react the way that it reacts. You have no control over how the audience reacts to you, let alone your content. But a lot of that gets lost in the mix. And again, to relate it all the way back to Patricia and her firing, a lot of this stuff happened underneath her watch. A lot of this stuff that happened and those reactions that we got for Kotaku happened while she was editor-in-chief. And I think at some point over there, management from Geo Media, which, again, for anybody that doesn't know, Geo Media is the parent company of Kotaku. They own most of the Gawker websites. So that includes Kotaku, Jezebel, Japotlik, I think you pronounce it. Again, I'm pronouncing it wrong. There was also... oh my God. There's 6 or 7 different websites that they have, all different subject matters. I think for Kotaku, I think might be the biggest as far as like viewership and readership. But the point is that Geo Media owns that website. Or at least they're the ones that are the parent company. And I think at some point, seeing the reaction and seeing the results of a lot of things that have happened with Kotaku over the last like year or two, leading up to them getting blacklisted by companies and other stuff, I think that they had enough. I think that, at some point, maybe they were looking at numbers or maybe they were looking at other stuff. And it was like, listen, we gotta find out what's going on over here. Like, we got to know what's up. Like, why is it that our outlet, that's supposed to be one of the major gaming outlets here in the industry, is getting blacklisted by a publisher, which our viewers and our readers want to check out? Like, what's the problem? And I think that whatever that personal disagreement that Patricia had with management was, maybe it was something that they probably had let boil over for a long time and finally wanted to do something about it. And she just wasn't having it. Now, this is the other thing too, that I think a lot of people need to understand, especially in the industry, is like, look, I don't think anybody is above their bosses. I don't think that anybody is above their positions as far as like what their responsibilities are and what they really should do in good ethical nature. I think the problem is that we get a lot of people in our industry that tend to get on this high horse, whether it's morally or ethically or all these other things, and they start to end up being obnoxious towards everybody else. So when things happen and things come back around, or the consequences of actions come back around and stuff, there's this woe is me attitude, or there's this nasty backlash from them towards whatever it is. Like in the case with Kotaku, a lot of the time, it's usually the op-eds and the editorials that they put out there. If you remember, the editorial that I think I mentioned already, where they put out about Call of Duty devs going to, I believe it was to Europe, to go record sound clips for their games. And the article, the op-ed, was implying that they were just going there for vacation, that they were going there for just a holiday. And the devs and everybody else got really pissed off. It's like, yo, listen, why are you putting something else like that out there into the world when we're out here working like all year around trying to do this stuff for this AAA game? Like, come on now. Like, you can't be just saying stuff like that and then not even backing it up. It's all opinion. It's like, but it's wrong. But regardless, though, there's a lot of different things that are all getting compounded into this leading up to this firing. I don't wish her ill. I don't wish Patricia Hernandez ill. I have to make it clear, too, because I said this on Twitter, and I think that it needs to be repeated for everybody. Someone getting fired or losing their job is never something to celebrate. Like in the games industry, especially the audience, we have this tendency to kind of almost take like these victory laps over things like this when we really shouldn't. Because that's someone's livelihood. That's someone that they were working there for a long time. Regardless of how you feel about them and their work, like that could be you one day. That could be you, at least, again, if you're in the industry, whether you're on the dev side, the media side, the artistic side, or even just a fan. Like that same type of thing could happen to you one day. And you wouldn't want someone to celebrate or take a victory lap at your expense like that, or at least at your misfortune. Like, to me, that's when we need to be mature people in our industry. It's one of the little sticking points for the games industry or the gaming scene that shows our immaturity a little bit, where we have to kind of take a step back and grow up and be like, yo, listen, that sucks. There's always going to be those debates and battles, but nobody should wish ill on somebody else like that. On top of all the other craziness we sometimes have to deal with in our industry, that's not something we need to contribute to. We need to add to. It sucks that a lot of stuff led up to that point, but it also sucks that someone had to lose their job, for things to get changed or to get better. Because I'll be honest with you, I would be totally cool with Patricia Hernandez staying as the editor-in-chief of Kotaku if things actually changed for the better for that website, for that outlet. If things were done a little bit differently, if people were kind of reined in a little bit with the way that they express their opinions or go about their opinions, more so trying to make content that gives to the audience and gives some more food for thought, as opposed to getting people angry enough to click on the website. At least that's how it feels. I would be totally fine with that if that was the change that was made. Maybe that wasn't the case. Maybe Geo Media saw that wasn't the case and they were like, you know what? That's it. You're done. But regardless, though, like I said, I feel like at some point very soon, this will all come out even more. There'll be more details that come out and we'll understand what led up to the actual firing. Okay, because again, like I said, it's an actual firing. It's not a dismissal. It's not a quitting. She actually got fired, but it is what it is. Anyway, let's talk about this other thing that's related to this that I mentioned here in the title. Let's talk about this Snow White stuff with Rachel Zegler. because this is a really weird, layered, and complicated discussion for a number of different reasons. The big thing really comes down to is how you present yourself on social media to an audience, especially as a actress or a star in a film that isn't made yet, really, because of the strikes and stuff going on with SAG-AFTRA and the WGA. There's a lot of stuff going on that kind of like makes this even worse. But at the heart of the issue, I think it's that Rachel Zegler just needs to have better media training. Needs to like take a step back and realize like, you know what, maybe it's not a good idea to kind of dunk on the original Disney film that people love and the reason why this film's getting remade. Maybe that's probably a good idea. You know what I'm saying? And the reason why I say that is because if you haven't already seen all the different places that I've been talking about this, some with a little bit more bad faith than others. But the real issue is that a lot of people just don't like what Rachel Zegler has been saying in a lot of past interviews in relation to the Snow White live action remake. A lot of the stuff that came out from an interview with her and Gal Gadot, that they were talking about how Snow White's not going to be rescued by the prince anymore in this version. She's going to more care about like becoming the leader that she knows that she deserves, and all this other stuff that's in relation to that. And also people just don't like the idea of like Rachel Zegler, who is the star of the movie, you know, who is cast as a Snow White, going around and saying like, look, it's not 1937 anymore. I was afraid of the original film and all these other things. You know, that's not something you really hear from someone who's got such a big part of a big movie like this. Regardless of if you actually care about Snow White is a huge deal for Disney. Snow White was the first animated film that not only won an Academy Award, I believe, or at least won some sort of like major award back in the day, but it was the one that really put Disney as a studio on the map back in the day. That's really what helped make Disney what it is, you know, besides all the other animated films that came afterwards. I think the one that was the first nominated animated film for an Academy Award was Beauty and the Beast, which was years later. But Snow White is the reason why Disney exists, besides Mickey Mouse. And the reason why I could say that is because that's actual history. Go look it up. Like, it's a huge, huge deal. But for many people, they don't always think about Snow White. We think of Snow White as one of the princesses, you know, from like the ensemble of princesses from animated films. But it was a big deal for a lot of other people growing up. So when you're someone, whether you're a star or someone working on this film, comes out and makes these statements that are almost taking like jabs or pop shots at the original film that people love from their childhood, that's going to cause a reaction. Like, that's going to get people really mad, like really upset, like in the worst way possible, probably to the point where a good number of them will either boycott or just straight up not go see this film. And if you're on an actual movie right now, especially given everything that's been going on with these strikes, you really don't need that happening at the moment. And I'm pretty sure with all the other problems Disney has going on right now, they don't need that as well. So I really do hope at some point, because let me make something clear. I don't think Rachel Zegler is a bad person. Like, we've seen a lot of people dunk on her. We're seeing a lot of people talk smack about her, saying that she's ungrateful, obnoxious, and the whole thing. Rachel Zegler's been around for a hot minute. She's a young actress, and she's been in some big movies. She was into in West Side Story, you know, with Steven Spielberg. So that's a pretty big deal, son. Like a really big deal. But the point is, though, is that I think this is one of her lesser moments that wasn't all that great. She probably said a little bit too much. Maybe she felt a certain way and probably didn't convey it the best way possible. But I do believe that maybe Disney or someone over on that actual team needs to get her some media training, or maybe get a better PR, actually get her through the motions of actually, like, you know, maybe making a better statement to kind of like, you know, smooth things over a little bit with everybody that's been following this stuff. Because you want people to go see your film. You want people to go see Snow White, even if it's the Snow White film that people don't expect it to be. Maybe it is an actual thing where it's like, okay, Snow White's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's going to have all these other things. I know there was a big deal with the dwarves, that they changed the dwarves. They're no longer going to be the 7 dwarves. It's going to be like the 7 people, the 7 warriors, or something like that, something random like that. That's a whole other conversation and controversy in of itself. But my point is like, look at all these things that are negatively like discussing the film. Like, I don't think you need to add on to that. I don't think you need to make it worse. I think that hopefully, like I said, Rachel Zegler at some point very soon could actually come out and make a better statement, or get her PR team to work with her in making a better statement to smooth things out, because they need people to go watch their film next year whenever it comes out, I believe. Yeah, I believe it's 2024 is when Snow White comes out. Maybe later, because I'm pretty sure with all the strikes going on, that movie's going to get delayed at some point, like a lot of other movies have been getting delayed. But They really need to figure something out. Disney specifically, I mean, needs to figure something out to kind of like, address a lot of this situation, because the conversation I'm seeing about Snow White in general is not good, and the movie has not even come out yet. The movie's not even deep into production because of the strikes, and I don't think that they really need this, because imagine, from now until whenever this movie comes out, that's the type of conversation you want to be having going on. Like, that's the type of stuff you really want people to be feeling about Snow White before your movie comes out. Because let me tell you something, I love The Little Mermaid. I actually really liked The Little Mermaid live action with Halle Bailey, that came out not too long ago. I actually enjoyed it. I thought people were way too harsh on that movie. But my point is that before that movie came out, there was a lot of bad conversation about it, a little bit of back and forth. And the conversation with Snow White is a lot more harsher and tumultuous than what it was with The Little Mermaid. Granted, luckily, Little Mermaid turned out great. But with this one, I feel like this is going to be even worse, because this film feels like, when you got the actual cast and the star of the film dunking on the thing that inspired this, that's really going to rub people the wrong way, and they're going to have a problem with it. So you got to figure something out overall. But anyway, those are my thoughts on all this craziness that's been going on the last, week or two since I did this last episode of the podcast. It's been a lot of stuff, and hopefully, because we're going into a better time now this season with a lot of big projects coming out. We got new games dropping next month, because I'm recording this in August, but we have September, which is going to have Mortal Kombat 1. I'm hyped. I'm ready for some new Mortal Kombat. The game looks dope. I'm thinking about pre-ordering it so I could get into the beta, because I was in the first closed beta. I want to get into the second one to play some more Mortal Kombat, because it looks really good. But besides that, we also got some new TV and movie stuff coming out soon. Like today, when I'm recording this, I'm going to go see Blue Beetle in theaters. I got the first showing in the Dolby Cinema in my AMC to go watch this. So I'm ready to see that. Hopefully it's not bad. Some people have said it's good, but for all we know, it could be a disaster. But we'll find out very soon. The other thing too, Ahsoka is next week. Now, you guys know how I love my Star Wars, and funny enough, at the time I'm recording this weekend, I'm going to a Star Wars event at Flynn's Arcade and More, which is dope. I've talked about that in the past. But with Ahsoka, I'm exceptionally excited, because I think this series is actually going to be really good. I think that the trailers, especially the new one that came out, the TV spot that showed, or at least had Anakin Skywalker talking, I think it's really starting to get me and a lot of other Star Wars fans very hyped. I cannot wait to see it. I think that also there's a lot of weird news going on with Lucasfilm with some of the other projects, but for now that Ahsoka is literally right around the corner, I think I'm in a good mood with Star Wars. I'm in a good vibe. I'm excited about Star Wars, which is what I want, and I think a lot of people are too, because we got Rosario Dawson, we got our boy Hayden Christensen coming back, we got a lot of other stuff going on with Sabine, Hera, Chopper. Even Chopper's excited in the new trailer, so there's a lot of good things to look forward to with Star Wars. Like I mentioned before earlier at the start of this podcast, make sure you go check out the new op-ed that I have over on .esports. I'll leave a link in the description box where I talk about Star Wars Outlaws. The whole discussion is about whether Star Wars Outlaws is the first, open world Star Wars game that we have right now. Is that claimed by Ubisoft and Massive Entertainment? Is that true? And I'm arguing that, yeah, it actually might be true for a number of reasons. But go read it. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. Talk to me about any of the stuff that we've talked about on this podcast too. Let me know your thoughts about it down below in the comment section. Make sure you leave a like on this video if you guys can. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because there's a lot of content. I know there's been little gaps here and there, but there's been a lot of content I've been putting up on here between new game previews. I know I've been slacking a little bit with the reviews, but look at how much content I've been doing out here between the writing, between the videos, between the podcasts, the TikToks. Don't forget also to go follow me over on TikTok, because there is a lot of content daily there related to video games and movies and entertainment that I know that you'll love. Go show me some love on there if you guys can. And with that being said, I will talk to all of you again very soon. Peace out and stay epic, everybody.